Hejsa. I finished this quilt that I started working on a couple of months ago, maybe. So the quilt top is done. I'm actually really happy with it. I wasn't 100% sure that I was going to be happy with it, because these aren't my favorite fabrics. They were sort of fabrics that I bought over the years. I liked them at the time, then I didn't quite find the right project for them, and then they turned into a pile of fabric that I didn't know what to do with, because your taste changes, doesn't it? So, but then I decided I would use it for this very scrappy quilt. So it's mostly fabrics from my stash, but I did have to add in some more fabrics. So I went looking for fabrics that felt similar, either in color or the patterns or whatever. I wanted this to be a challenge to use stuff that maybe wasn't my favorite fabrics, but maybe I would like the end result anyway. And happily I do. So I posted some other videos about this quilt top, about how to put, so this is made up of 3 different blocks. So I made, I think it was a couple of posts about how to make this block, which is made up of 4 smaller blocks. And I also linked to the, not made by me but someone else, a video about making this block, which was the inspiration for the whole quilt. So I'll link to all those videos if you want to check them out. So this is the layout of the quilt. So although it looks very random, which was on purpose, there's actually some kind of method to the madness. So I wanted to use these quite big blocks, and I wanted the quilt to have a certain size, and it ended up being a square quilt. That wasn't really my goal, but as long as it was big enough for 2 people to sleep under it, that was the aim. So as you can see, I've got 3 different blocks in here. There's this one, which is a Wonky 9 patch. And then there's this one, which is, I guess, sort of a Wonky 16 patch, made up of 4 patch blocks. And then the final one is a rectangular one. Don't know if you can see the rectangle here. So my plan was to make the rectangle block like I had made these 4 patch blocks, but somehow I cut the base pieces of fabric for the rectangular blocks, so that once I had cut and sewn them together, they ended up just a tiny bit smaller than they needed to be. And I didn't have enough fabric to redo them. And already I was sort of stretching my fabric, because the reason why I went with squares and then rectangles was because some of the, or most of the fabrics, I didn't have enough fabric left to make more squares, so it had to be rectangles, because then the fabric is narrower and I could use up more of the scraps. So anyway, my rectangular blocks were too small. So what I ended up doing was, and I think this is actually this is one I made after I realized I didn't have enough. Let's just find another one. Let's have a look. This is quite a big quilt top. Let's see what we got. Right here. So this is one of the rectangles that I had made that weren't big enough. So in this case, it was only the length that wasn't large enough. So I cut a bit of fabric and sewed that on at an angle. For some of them, I had to also add a bit so that it became wider. And actually, I'm kind of glad that this happened, because although it is a fairly crazy, scrappy, wonky quilt, the fact that the rectangular blocks don't follow the pattern helps to make it not quite as uniform, because although all the blocks are completely different, they all sort of follow the same pattern of making them. So let's see if I can find the one I was just looking at. Oh yeah, here it is. So I realized I didn't have enough. I think I was missing 4 or something. So I made some more simply by just cutting some bits of fabric. Here I started with the same method of sewing them together and then cutting them at an angle, or rather cutting them at an angle and then sewing them together, then cutting them again and mixing them up. And yeah, but this, I knew this wouldn't be big enough, so I added more bits. And I really like how random, especially those extra blocks are. And because I was starting to run really low on fabric from the pile for the quilt, I had to get really creative about how I used the fabrics, which was quite fun. A little bit frustrating as well, but overall I'm happy with it, and I'm happy with the whole look of the quilt, or the whole look of the quilt top. And this is actually one of my favorite fabrics in the quilt, although yellow is not really one of my go-to colors, but I really like this one. And I feel like it really sort of brings the quilts up to life, because it is such a bright color and it almost reads as a solid color as well. It's just a shame that I didn't have enough to add more of it throughout the quilt. But I had some other yellow fabrics that I think helped to sort of brighten things up a bit, because there are quite a lot of dark colors in here, like dark blues and dark purples. So as you can see, it's quite a limited color palette, although it looks like there's loads going on. But the colors are mainly purple, darkish blue, pink or magenta, and then there's orange and some yellow. And then there are a few pops of different green fabrics. But I think all the green fabrics, they lean either sort of heavily towards blue, or they lean towards yellow. So I feel like they don't stand out as being super green. They're more sort of variations of the other colors. So now that the quilt top is done, which I must say I finished it sooner than I thought I would, I need to think about what I'm going to do with the back for the quilt. I sort of have an idea, but I'm not sure that it will work, so I guess I'll show that once I've finished the quilt. And I also have an idea for the binding, but again, I'm not sure that it will work. And I may change my mind, and then I may change my mind back again. You never know. But I still have some time to finish the whole quilt. I need it finished sort of by the end of, well, mid to end of July. So I've got a couple of months, 2.5 months. I'm sure I can finish it by then. Well, I have to, because it's a gift, so there's no choice really. In case you're wondering, the quilt top is, I think, 84 inches on both sides. That's right, isn't it? 14, 28, 56, 70, yeah, 84 inches. So the squares are 14 inches, well, 14.5 until they were sewn together. And the rectangles were 14.5 by 7.5. I was going to just sort of lay the blocks out. I use our bed for it when it's a large quilt. And I tried that, but I quickly realized that I needed some kind of system, because the blocks are so scrappy and wonky. I couldn't quite sort of picture it in my head. So I went on my computer and drew out this plan, because I also wanted to make sure that I used up all the blocks that I had already made. And then of course it turned out that I needed more of the rectangles. Although when I put it together, I've actually got a few blocks left over. I'm not sure how that happened. But anyway, I will share the quilt once it's done. Hopefully I'll get it done soonish, so that it's not a last minute thing. There's quite a lot of quilting I need to do on this large quilt. It's a little bit daunting on my sewing machine. I haven't got a long arm and I can't really do hand quilting, at least not for something as large as this. So we'll see what I come up with. I also need to make a very important decision about what color thread to use for the quilting. I may use this one. I'm not sure how well it shows up, that it's a variegated thread from Orifel. It's called Pink Taffy. I really like this thread. It goes from a very dark pink to, well, I guess a light pink. I keep thinking that there's white in it, but I'm not sure that there is. But anyway, it's shades of pink. And I really like this, but I'm not sure that it would work. But on the other hand, there is pink in the quilt top, so it may be a nice contrast. Maybe. We'll see. If you have any suggestions for the thread color, I would love to know. So I hope you like this little video about my work in progress quilt top, which is finished. Still to finish the quilt. I hope you have a lovely day and happy stitching.